The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Excuse me. Hello, and thank you for joining today's Rev-Trac webinar on the fast track to SAP DevOps with automation. We hope to provide you with some new and useful information today, which you can put into action and begin to apply at least some of the key DevOps principles to your SAP development, testing, and operations processes. Today's webinar is set for 30 minutes. It's being recorded, and everyone will get a link to the recording. The slides are available for you to download during the webinar if you'd like, or you can always email us afterward for a copy of the slides and we'll be happy to send them to you. Please enter any questions in the chat window and we'll do our best to answer the questions at the end. So let's get started. My name is Dan McGran and I'm today's host. Happy to be here. We see that a good number of Rev-Trac customers have joined today's webinar, which makes sense since we're getting a lot of interest from our customers regarding their particular SAP DevOps initiatives. Welcome to those customers and also, of course, to everyone else who may not be as familiar with Rev-Trac, especially for those newer type of attendees. We wanted to briefly let you know who we are. Our company is Revelation Software Concepts, and we've been helping all sizes of organizations automate and simplify their SAP change management processes for more than about 20 years now. Our primary software solution is called Rev-Trac, which was developed in SAP's ABAP language, really to enable key DevOps principles of automated deployment and communication with easy to configure and standardized processes for the users. Of course, since DevOps has been around for about 10 years now, Rev-Trac predated those DevOps concepts, but Rev-Trac's foundation is built on those key capabilities, which I just mentioned, and has really evolved over the years into the SAP-specific DevOps orchestration platform that it is today. We're going to cover a lot in the next 30 minutes, including towards the end a brief demonstration of how Rev-Trac can help automate some SAP code checking and some automated integration testing processes for SAP systems. And we've included a lot of relevant links on the SAP DevOps topic on our final slide, and the URLs to those links, which we certainly hope you'll find helpful if you want to review those after today's webinar as you explore DevOps for your organization a little bit more. Okay, so we don't want to be too theoretical here today, right? Instead, we want to provide some good practical information and advice so you can see how and if SAP DevOps would be good for your organization. So we're going to try to keep things simple. That's why you really don't see some nice circular SAP project plan with the traditional steps of blueprinting and realization, go live, hypercare, those types of things. We've just boiled things down to planning, change, and automation as the things to focus on. We'll get into each of these in a few more slides, but briefly by planning, we mean knowing where you want to go and putting the pieces in place to get there. Upfront planning, we feel, will really help you avoid some false starts and for the most part, keep you on your course. Additionally, the changes to your team's processes and cultures might be sizable. So that planning and sponsorship should help you navigate through those changes as they go through. Finally, there's the automation component. Every DevOps definition or workshop or presentation hammers home the point that automation is key. We're no different here, and so we're going to be covering that in detail as well today. But before you start any type of SAP DevOps effort, it probably makes sense to have a good understanding of the potential benefits you might realize. This graphic is from the 2019 State of DevOps report that's put out each year for the past several years by a DevOps-focused company named Puppet. And although these stats aren't specific to SAP, some of the items in the report are very relevant for SAP customers, we feel. This graphic in particular, I feel, is interesting in that the statistics in green are about the change velocity and the ones in blue are about the quality. I feel these numbers really have to be taken with a little bit of a grain of salt because they compare the very worst respondents at the very best. That results in somewhat inflated statistics or numbers, in my opinion, but still very interesting and very revealing. From our experiences, all SAP customers want more frequent releases or code deployments to production systems, and a faster pace as they go through the development, testing, and production import processes. We often hear that even though a change may only take a couple hours to develop and test, it might take a couple weeks to actually get that change to the production system through the current processes. And I think we all know in today's dynamic business environments, that's becoming more of a problem. Regarding the improved quality statistics, who can really argue with significantly lower change failure rates or faster time to recovery from various issues, as you're seeing in the blue? All right then, but how do these generic DevOps benefits translate into SAP-specific DevOps benefits? After all, we're talking about SAP here today, and we all know it's a little special. There has been a clear shift with SAP customers, ours included, over the past few years to move from a philosophy of, let's say, something like, let's protect production at all costs. That's the philosophy they operate by, right? You have to make sure that production is 100% stable. So the focus is protecting production. But you have to shift to an attitude of find ways to deliver changes and releases to the business faster, right? That's sort of the seismic shift that needs to go on. And that benefit of faster and more frequent SAP releases being delivered to the business users is clearly the top reason for wanting to move ahead with DevOps initiatives. But you can imagine delivering faster releases filled with defects or releases which require tons of hypercare wouldn't be too well, right? So you need to really work on the quality side of things too. So they go hand in hand with the frequent releases. You need to keep the quality up there as well as increasing the release velocity. And that's really achieved with better and automated testing, which is consistently enforced. And we'll get into that in the next few minutes. So these velocity and quality improvements also quickly lead to additional benefits of efficiency improvements for all SAP teams in areas such as faster development error correction, right? Catching your errors faster and improving your development process. Really what people call the shift left move in DevOps environments. It also leads to better cooperation between teams because of the cross-functional training and responsibilities that are going on. We'll get into that in a little few minutes. Also, you can hopefully realize cost savings due to standardization and automation, and just an overall positive cultural change to continuous improvement of the entire end-to-end process. That's what we mean by general increased efficiencies of the SAP teams. So they're the key reasons why lots of customers are considering DevOps these days. So up to this point, we really haven't explained what we mean by SAP DevOps yet. There are lots of definitions and opinions from SAP, of course, from SAP consulting companies, from software partners like Revelation Software Concepts here today, analysts, many others. But we put one here, which was from SAP's DevOps white paper, which is a very good and comprehensive white paper in SAP standard fashion. It's almost 40 pages long, but this was a pretty good, concise definition of what DevOps is in the SAP world. Of course, you're also going to find some new acronyms, right? In the DevOps world, you'll frequently see CAMS, which stands for Culture, Automation, Measurement, and Sharing, really the pillars of a DevOps process that people are implementing. And again, we all know that SAP has to be a little different and put their own special mark on DevOps. So they've modified the acronym to CALMS there, where they added the L, and that stands for Lean Operations. You can find that SAP CALMS approach on the SAP DevOps webpage, which really is a good source of information. And of course, that link is included in the references I've been mentioning. But if you spend some time there, I think you'll quickly notice that SAP DevOps solutions come in lots of varieties. By that, I mean there are solutions for the SAP Cloud Platform. There are solutions for Fiori and Web IDE development. There's something out there called Project Piper, which is really an ongoing project attempting to create a standard continuous delivery pipeline with open source tools Jenkins and GitHub, which you might be familiar with, and also for other technologies as well. But many of these topics and solutions are focused on newer SAP technologies. Excuse me. Maybe your organization is already using some of these newer SAP technologies, or you're planning to use them soon. So, of course, these areas will be interesting for you. But What about the elephant in the room, as they say? What about DevOps for SAP ABAP? That's the main area of interest which we're seeing from SAP customers. There is some information on that SAP DevOps site regarding ABAP, but it's mostly about theoretical, sort of rapidly changing and still developing technologies such as ABAP Git or GCTS, which is Git-enabled CTS. There's not a whole lot of practical information there or really anywhere that we could find on how to apply DevOps practices to ABAP development, testing, and operations processes. So that's what we're going to focus on today. Basically, how you can leverage current technologies to realize the benefits of SAP DevOps, which we just mentioned in the previous slide, the faster releases, the improved quality, the overall improved efficiencies. All right, getting back to our three critical elements and what you can do today to start down the road of SAP DevOps. Firstly, sounds simple, but just take some time to put a plan in place. Regarding the scope and timelines, we recommend at this point to keep the scope focused on the SAP ABAP processes, not the other SAP or even non-SAP technologies which might be in use at your organization. We've seen projects get stuck quickly when organizations are trying to design enterprise-wide DevOps processes for multiple technology stacks at the same time. All of a sudden, there may be a dozen or more DevOps applications involved, all connecting, of course, to the mission-critical applications that they're trying to control. All of these things need alignment and integration to one another, which can quickly cause a sort of project paralysis. You sort of get stuck because there's too many moving parts all at once. So keep the initial scope simple and focused on the ABAP stack. It can always be expanded later as you sort of crawl, walk, run along this approach. For a timeline, we typically recommend something like a 30, 60, 90-day approach to keep the momentum going. But being in the SAP world for so long, as we have and many on today's call have, I think we all know that a more realistic timeline would be to double that, sort of a 60, 120, 180 timeline. That'll still keep the momentum going, but give you time for all the other activities that everyone seems to be busy with these days and throughout their SAP careers, as we tend to know. Depending on your organization's size and project management practices, you might need to develop a more formal project plan with the required sponsorship and funding sources, or maybe a formal business case is needed to get this type of project going. Right, we've been through that with some of our customers, so you can always reach out to us if that's the situation you're in. We'd be able to help out if possible. But really, regardless of your internal requirements, the sponsorship part is key because the cultural and process change is going to require that strong leadership to make those changes that are needed. So during this initial planning phase, it's also a good idea to begin to educate the teams on topics such as automated code checking, maybe automated ABAP unit testing. Also, take a look at automated SAP integration testing. You're going to see some of these examples a little bit later in the demonstration. And those types of automated testing code checking solutions are available from SAP and third-party companies, and they are a key part of a complete SAP DevOps solution. Once some decisions have been made during the planning phase, it's really time to dig into the process and culture change aspects. A good place to start is by creating a cross-functional team which is responsible for multiple parts of the beginning to end process, and not just a single part, such as teams being responsible for the development or testing or deployment phases. And I think we know many organizations are set up in silos with these specific functions assigned to the different teams. Sometimes even those functions are assigned to specific outsourced partners. And that type of siloed team approach has to be changed in order to enable SAP DevOps. Definitely need to emphasize that. Those silos need to come down. This follows along the lines of agile teams being set up as internal process owners or product owners, where those relatively small process owner teams can handle the entire dev, test, deploy process with their own resources, of course, with the necessary governance and some automation along the way. And adapting your SAP IT team structure is probably the biggest variable for our customers that we've seen on their SAP DevOps journey. For some, their team is relatively small, only located in one or two geographies, while for other customers, the teams are massive, right? They're spread out globally across many different time zones. Lots of times they have multiple outsourcing partners responsible for the different functions, as we were mentioning earlier. And clearly, the smaller customers should have an easier time adapting because of their size, and the larger teams will just have to start small, stay focused, really employ some type of phased approach to get things going. But no matter really the size or structure, the next part that you need to take a look at is to analyze your current as-is processes and start to map out your to-be processes. You're going to want to look at things such as your current production import schedule for your different types of SAP changes and determine not if, but how they're going to change. In other words, how are you going to get your changes to production at a faster pace? Not the end of next week, but how about by the end of tomorrow? Those types of things. And you're going to go through also figuring out how you're going to handle the safe testing of these changes as they move through various systems. At this point, these processes would be paper-based for now. They'll have to be reviewed and revised through a series of workshops with the key stakeholders, really until you've settled on a new process supported by those new reorganized cross-functional teams. Along the way, new perspectives, really based on a DevOps culture, will have to be discussed and socialized with everyone. For example, many SAP customers have the perspective that big and slow releases are the safe way to go, because really that's the way it's always been done there for maybe 5, 10, 15, or 20 years. That will have to shift to the perspective that small and fast is the safe way to go. We saw this shift at one of our larger customers a few years ago, where new process-focused teams were formed, and that resulted in some disruptive team structure changes. But they were able to adapt by taking the slow and steady approach that we had mentioned before, and they really shifted to a much more agile and DevOps SAP development processes that they're running today. We've already mentioned the shift from siloed teams to cross-functional teams, where the process steps are shared among the team members. That's something that a new perspective that needs to be taken in. Also, one of our large utility customers, gave us a quick example of a new perspective on SAP change velocity. As part of their SAP Agile DevOps initiative, they had a top-down directive to take SAP changes from idea to production within 5 days, which was, of course, a significant reduction in lead time, close to a 10x reduction. There is one other perspective which is prevalent in the non-SAP DevOps world, which doesn't really quite translate well for SAP DevOps. That's the concept of speed over safety. You'll hear phrases like fail fast and fail often in lots of DevOps workshops. And that concept can be applied somewhat when moving into SAP quality and test systems, but certainly not so much when moving into SAP production systems, given the typically high cost of downtime associated with those SAP production environments. So we feel that really needs to be adapted somewhat to more of a speed with safety approach. And that speed with safety approach can be achieved through automation capabilities, which conveniently is the next topic we're going to discuss. A little while ago, I was talking about a definition for SAP DevOps, and we feel, a pretty good one from SAP from that white paper I mentioned. But I feel this diagram really summarizes the practical application of SAP DevOps for ABAP. It brings together the three key elements of development, testing, and operations, or deployment, as you might call it, and visually shows how these three key processes and teams come together through an automation platform to enable SAP DevOps for ABAP. In this picture, you can sort of see that the circles are all the same size, meaning that each team or process is equally important. In our experience, what we see out there is if you have automated testing solutions for, let's say, unit testing, functional testing, or integration testing, but you don't have an automated release and deployment process, you're going to have a bottleneck with that release and deployment process because many of those steps are occurring manually. If the opposite is true, and you've automated release and deployment steps, but you haven't automated your testing steps, then testing becomes the bottleneck. You're just shifting the manual bottleneck around when you have a partially automated solution. So here on the left is a good list of the activities you should focus on when looking to automate an SAP DevOps process. So automating development workflows means that you have pre-configured workflows based on the different types of SAP changes. For example, maybe it's an incident which was initially raised in an ITSM solution such as ServiceNow. That incident would automatically create an SAP change request for the development team or configuration team to work on. And that request would have the pre-configured approval, testing, and documentation steps needed to go from the SAP development system through the testing systems to the production system, the whole path. And you would have some number of different automated workflows set up for the different types of SAP changes that you have. Another important automation piece is being able to share a small number of automatically adaptable workflows between different SAP systems, between different SAP landscapes, even between different SAP teams, such as your production support team and your project teams. This is especially relevant, we feel, in larger SAP environments. And really, why is that? Because shared processes with your orchestration platform makes adoption and ongoing administration much easier by reducing the amount of workflows to choose from a user perspective, right? The users have fewer workflows to choose from, which makes it easier to adopt and use, and much easier to maintain, of course, from an administrator perspective. If you're only maintaining a couple, maybe a half a dozen shared adaptable workflows instead of 20 or 30 or 40 independent workflows, it's much easier. So if we look inside this testing circle, an area you'll want to work on is building up expertise in various automated SAP testing solutions, as well as impact analysis and code checking applications. You're probably familiar with SAP options such as ABAP Test Cockpit, also known as ATC, or SAP's Code Inspector, maybe even ABAP unit capabilities. There are also commercial solutions which you might be aware of, impact analysis with a product called Live Compare, and automated SAP integration testing solutions from companies like Worksoft, Micro Focus, Tricentis, and others. Those applications will definitely provide the automated testing and code checking, which of course can save you the lots of time and effort that you're looking for. But it's also very important that the DevOps automation platform and orchestration platform seamlessly integrates with those testing applications, ideally with REST APIs for simplicity and security. Another critical automation step with SAP DevOps or ABAP is automated error checking by the automation platform. For some examples here, for situations such as transport sequencing, which could result in some troublesome overtake and overwrite situations. Another error checking thing to keep in mind is how to handle dependent SAP objects, because if you don't catch those SAP dependent objects before the deployment step, that could also result in some unexpected errors and conditions that you want to avoid. This automated error checking is the key to the speed with safety objective we mentioned earlier. In wrapping up this list, release management automation is needed especially for SAP customers running lots of simultaneous projects. Right? We're just working with a new customer now, and they were telling us the projects that they had in flight, and I think it was somewhere around 20 to 30 in flight. So what release management helps those customers do with all of these projects is it brings all the SAP changes together so that they are moved together, they're tested together, and then that none are accidentally left behind, right? Things are moving in groups and going through the various processes all together. And then reporting, of course, is needed for the ongoing DevOps measurement and continuous improvement activities that you're trying to achieve. So I've mentioned an SAP DevOps for ABAP automation platform a few times now, but really haven't explained what it is or what we mean by it. We're really hoping this diagram will help give you a better idea of what we're talking about here. So let's start in the middle here and work our way out. SAP and Rev-Trac are really in the middle. A simple three-system SAP landscape is shown with the development, quality, and production systems. Of course, more complex SAP landscapes and multiple SAP landscapes are supported, but we're trying to keep this diagram on the simpler side. Then there are example Rev-Trac steps or statuses represented by the small clipboards with the activities shown. It's meant to represent a typical but very flexible automated DevOps build, test, deploy process where different participants in those cross-functional teams are performing various SAP activities and various Rev-Trac activities. The DevOps automation is represented by the blue bidirectional lines where Rev-Trac and the other application, for example, ServiceNow or SAP's ABAP Test Cockpit, are integrated so that things such as fields and statuses and other actions are automatically updated in an orchestrated and coordinated way. This really eliminates the swivel chair approach, which we see, where applications need to be updated manually. But just as important as eliminating that manual updating with that swivel chair approach, this automates and enforces a standardized process flow without the user actually having to log into these other applications to perform those steps. Right? That saves a lot of time, it saves a lot of effort, and it makes sure that it's done 100% of the time. For example, in a moment, I'm going to move on to a brief recording and demonstration recording where a Rev-Trac workflow is configured to automatically send the associated SAP transport to ABAP Test Cockpit and then either reject in the case of failing the ATC check or approve the change to the quality system in the case of passing the ATC check, sort of something represented by that bidirectional line. Then in the second recording, I'll show a similar process for integration testing with automated SAP test software, sort of over here. It's actually integrating with this company called Tricentis Tosca software. This is what we mean by an SAP DevOps automation platform, automating the majority of activities in an end-to-end build, test, deploy process for your SAP ABAP systems. There is one thing I want to clarify before moving to the brief demonstrations. Even though we've narrowed today's topic down to SAP DevOps for ABAP, which you've heard me say lots of times already, Rev-Trac also handles non-ABAP changes such as business objects or portal or native HANA changes in a similar way. It's just those topics were outside the scope of today's session, so I want to make that point. Now bear with me, and I'm going to move on to the demos that we have prepared. They just take a few minutes. Take a look at a quick time check. Okay, we're just a few minutes behind, but still going to finish up right around that 30 minutes. Okay, so this is about a 2-minute demonstration where we're going to show our automated integration into ABAP Test Cockpit. Going to start this now. For those not familiar with Rev-Trac or with our web interface, this is the main screen, which has customizable widgets to show things like your work in progress and other useful information. Also provides easy access to the rest of Rev-Trac. For this demonstration, we're going to choose Rev-Trac number 371 to show our automated ATC integration. This brings up the Rev-Trac detail screen where I can access important information about this change. I'm going to stop it there for a second. For those, again, not familiar, a key part here is this ribbon bar at the top, which shows how this change will progress from development into quality and then into production. This is just a very simple workflow. These can be as simple or as complex as needed to support our customer environment. So just wanted to point that out. Okay, in a moment, we're going to choose the technical tab on the left where I can see the transports for this Rev-Trac. In this case, it's only one, but there's no limit to the number of transports from the same or different SAP systems. It has one program, which has one line of code, which we're navigating to now, and that call statement right there violates a very simple ATC check, which was configured for this demonstration. So we come back into Rev-Trac, we try to approve the migration into the quality system. This is where we automatically call ABAP Test Cockpit and act on the results. What we're showing here is where this transport will migrate to if the migration steps, approval steps are successful. Okay. Next, we're automatically presented with our pre-approval check screen, which shows the ATC errors at the top. You can see those with the little red indicator. There aren't any dependency errors or impact warnings, some of that other error checking I was talking about, but we can't move ahead because of the ATC error. The developer is automatically notified via email that it failed. They'll go in to fix it. After we click OK here, that all happens automatically. The transport was stopped, or the approved migration was stopped. So they would come back in and just really comment out that line of code. Again, a very simple example. Obviously, it wouldn't be this simple in the real world, but we're operating in the demo world here today. We go through our save and activate steps. Since this transport wasn't released yet, we're using the same transport, which really actually helps prevent bad development from getting into the quality system. So we're enforcing better quality or development processes, I should say. We're going to try and approve it to the quality system again here. It's telling us where it's going. And here we see that there are no ATC errors this time. I'm going to stop it there for a second. We can see under our ABAP text cockpit and code inspector check, no errors were found. So this can proceed with the migration to quality. And that's pretty much the end of this very brief demonstration to show you that capability. Okay. So let me get out of there. Again, that's our very basic integration with ATC for some simple code checking. Of course, more advanced integrations can be easily configured. And we're just hoping that gave you a good idea of how it works and the possibilities that could be easily implemented with Rev-Trac as that orchestration engine. Okay, we're going to move on to another one in a moment. Let me stop this one first. It went into autoplay mode. Come into here. Okay, this one's a little bit longer, but in the interest of time, we're going to skip through and just play through the most important parts. You could find this full end-to-end 7-minute recording or so, excuse me, didn't mean to start it, on our website. But in this example, we're showing an automated testing using Tricentis Tosca, automated SAP testing software. I think I mentioned before that Rev-Trac has an open integration strategy with our REST APIs with other SAP testing solutions, so we can support ones such as WorkSoft and Micro Focus and others in addition to Tosca. So for this workflow, as you're going to see in a moment, again, the ribbon bar at the top, there isn't an automated ATC check. It's not configured here for this demonstration. Instead, this is configured to automatically send the SAP changes in the Rev-Trac to the automated testing solution once it's successfully imported into the quality system. So we're just going through some of these approval steps. Our error checks are going. You can see no ATC check there. So it's going to move it into quality. Rev-Trac releases the transport and the associated tasks. In this demo, right about this point, we go to the SAP logs, which we're going to skip for the interest of time. We pick up where the Rev-Trac is imported, has already imported the transport into the quality system without any technical issues. So the in QA step here was automatically done by Rev-Trac, which we're showing. So what happens next is the change is automatically passed to the automated testing solution. And we can actually see some of the activities driven by this automated test. We're going to let that run for a few moments. It's a simple test, so it's only going to take 15 or 20 seconds. Again, this is set up for demonstration purposes, but of course, these tests might take longer to run in real live SAP systems, not demo systems like we have here at Rev-Trac. So we're going to come back to the Rev-Trac screen to see the results. Okay. In this case, we can see that the testing complete step, I'm going to pause it there for a second, this testing complete step in the ribbon bar is still blue, okay? Meaning that it hasn't been approved, or actually meaning that the testing has failed, which we're going to see in just a moment. Otherwise, that step would automatically happen and be turned green. So let's let this run and quickly look around to see what's going on. We can see that the test was automatically submitted by Rev-Trac and it's logged in our References tab. And in just a moment, we're going to refresh that and get the results of that test because it takes a moment to catch up, and we can see that the testing had failed, and that was documented. Then if we look at the workflow here in a moment, which I'll stop for a second, we can see that the status was automatically rejected by Rev-Trac because we received the failure notification from the testing application. Again, The person responsible for fixing this would have received an email, and Rev-Trac also automatically set the status back to migrate to QA because another transport is going to need to be added to fix this since it failed after it was imported to the quality system. So all of those things happened automatically. Again, a lot of automation and orchestration going on. We're just sort of showing that there. And then there's one additional thing we do from a documentation standpoint. We actually attach the results of that testing solution in our attachments tab, right? It was converted to PDF, and it shows here that there were some errors. Of course, you could get further information from the testing application, but this is just a summary to show that the test failed. Okay, so it's time to fix this with a new transport. We're going to skip over these again because that's very technical SAP. You can see it on the demo. Pick up once the second transport was added to the same Rev-Trac request, which you can see here. You can see that it wasn't released with this blue or light gray indicator. So we're going to go through the migrate to quality steps again. Of course, only the new transport gets migrated this time. We're going to let the demo run here and show the SAP logs this time to verify that only the newer transport, in this case ending in 430, was imported. When that's done, we're going to come back to Rev-Trac. So this is the fixed transport. Okay, now it's getting into the quality system, which means the test will automatically run again in the Tricentis Tosca solution. We come look at it. We can see that that test there was submitted. The second one, the first one failed. We submitted it again. It's going to run again in just a moment because this is happening automatically. We can look over there. No need to really go through those steps again. The same thing's happening. You saw it the first time. Okay, then we're back in Rev-Trac one more time to check on the results. The test was submitted, and when refreshing, actually, let me just stop there and back up that one a little bit fast. We can see that the testing complete bar is green. Last time it was blue. That's an indication that the testing has succeeded, right? And Rev-Trac automatically did that, and that's what we're showing here. In just a moment, when we look at the approvals, we see that this testing complete was done by Rev-Trac, sort of our auto tester client there, or user, I should say, whereas other ones were done by people. Okay. We can also check on the documentation. We can see that it passed here in the References tab. Again, this was automatically attached. And then we can come back and look at the physical document, the PDF that was converted, and we can see here that we're all greens. We ran 2 tests, didn't have any errors, failures, or anything skipped, and it's ready to go. Fully documented, very much fully automated. So again, that's just, that wraps up our automated SAP testing example. Again, we hope you have a good idea of the powerful automation steps that can be easily integrated between Rev-Trac and other SAP testing applications. Okay, let me skip out of here. Get back to the slides in a moment. We're just a few minutes over, so we're going to wrap up. We only have 2 more things to go here, I think. Okay, so just some parting thoughts, right? Hopefully, especially with some of those demonstrations and our explanation of Rev-Trac as an automated orchestration engine, you can see now how that automated orchestration is critical to an SAP DevOps or ABAP solution. And it's really the combination of automated testing and automated change and release management, which delivers the full solution. Certainly recommend to start simple and build things over time, right? Don't try to boil the ocean, as we like to say here. Pick a project or team and get started, right? You have to start somewhere. If you can't get something like this up and running in just a few weeks in a pilot or a POC mode, that probably means that the solution is too complicated to use in a full mode, right? It has to be a simple, easy to implement, easy to configure, easy to use solution. And that's what you really get with Rev-Trac. And then just lastly, when you're going through this, try not to get wrapped up in some rigid definition or implementation of a DevOps methodology, especially if other groups are involved, right? Focus on the outcomes you're trying to achieve, specifically in the SAP space. Those outcomes were the ones we talked about before, right? The faster and more frequent SAP releases, the improved quality, the overall improved efficiency. That's what you're trying to achieve, not sticking to some esoteric type DevOps structure that you might have to find at your organization. I mentioned that there were some websites that we'd include for references. So here you go. Here's a good list of them. We start off with some from Rev-Trac, which has some DevOps information on our website. Hopefully that's where you found the webinar initially. There's the SAP DevOps page with the COMS acronym that they use. That sort of organizes things there with lots of good information. That State of DevOps report. These two videos are each about 20 to 30 minutes, so you'll have to invest some time, but they were very good. This one was from the German-speaking DSAG users group. It was in English, which was good for English-only speakers like myself, and very good information about where SAP is with DevOps and where they're going. This was a good talk from Chris Kernan on DevOps and SAP. Understands both sides, has worked in SAP for a long time, and is a very practiced person in DevOps. And then just some others, some stuff on ABAP Git, the GCTS, which by the way is only compatible with the latest versions of S/4HANA. So just some good information there. So with that, I'm going to try to navigate over to our questions, which is always a bit of a difficulty with this interface, I find. And, oh, okay, I am seeing some. Oh, okay, seeing quite a lot. So let me see. How does Rev-Trac compare to and advantages of Rev-Trac over SAP Charm? Yep, we certainly get those at pretty much every webinar or talk we do. So just to be clear, Rev-Trac is an alternative to SAP Charm or SAP Focus Build, which is really based on Charm for the transport deployment parts. So hopefully today you saw some of the capabilities of Rev-Trac in terms of integration for automated testing. There's, of course, lots that we didn't show today, but in general, it's all about ease of use for customers, ease of implementation, ease of ongoing administration. Another advantage of Rev-Trac, especially when you start integrating, is that it doesn't break when one side or the other needs upgrading. If the SAP systems need upgrading, Rev-Trac keeps running. If the third-party applications need upgrading, Rev-Trac keeps running. So that's a big advantage that we see in practice of Rev-Trac. Another one, does Rev-Trac do auto-syncing when systems are down for a given period of time? Yes, so Rev-Trac can be, systems can be put in maintenance mode within Rev-Trac to handle a quality refresh or system maintenance issues, and Rev-Trac's keeping track of the transports that are not moving into those systems at that time, and when that system comes back online, it's a very easy process to get them back in sync. Another one, for ABAP developments done in Eclipse, brackets CDS, how does Rev-Trac assist in automated CI/CD pipeline? Okay. So certainly a pretty deep question, but I can tell you right now that Rev-Trac does support developments done in the Eclipse interface, for customers developing in the SAP world, and we can pull those transports in and they can follow a very structured Rev-Trac process. So we've had customers that are using Eclipse and Rev-Trac is working fine there. For more details, we'd be happy to dig in a little bit deeper if you'd like to take a further look. Could you please help us understand the Rev-Trac change during an SAP upgrade? Okay. Well, I guess that means, how does Rev-Trac help and what does Rev-Trac do during an SAP upgrade, right? For most upgrades that we see, you normally have to go into, a secondary development, secondary quality system, what customers call an N+1, and Rev-Trac certainly handles those types of situations very well. We have some good white papers on our website on how Rev-Trac handles those N+1 environments with our automated cloning, which some customers call retrofitting, and does a lot of those things automatically. So please check some of that information out. Does Rev-Trac also check transport dependencies? Yes, briefly mentioned that earlier today with our peripheral object dependency check, where we will look to see if there are any dependencies on transports before importing them into the follow-on target system and alert you to them very clearly before, let you know exactly what is dependent, even down to the version level. I'll probably just take one or two more here in the interest of time. How long does it take to implement Rev-Trac for 3 tracks? By 3 tracks, I'm assuming they mean 3 landscapes, and that's a pretty typical type of implementation. So we'd recommend somewhere 2 to 4, 2 to 5 weeks for something like that. It's a fairly straightforward installation and configuration process, and that's what we're typically seeing with our customers. It's just that roughly within a month, let's say. Lastly, does Rev-Trac allow parallel development? Well, yes, Rev-Trac does allow parallel development in that we help manage parallel development. We let you know from the very beginning if you are working on an object that was already released and is not yet in production. So let's say it was released, it's in quality, and someone comes along to make another change to that object. You're alerted from the very beginning, and then you have multiple ways of configuring that in Rev-Trac to either allow that, to make that go through some type of parallel development approval process, or deny it, and very easy to configure, set up, and we'd have to follow up on that as a separate one. But yes, we do allow parallel development and help customers manage it. So there were a few more, and just I want to respect everyone's time in the interest of we're about 45 minutes into this. We will get back to all those additional questions separately and look for an email from us. Wanted to thank everyone for joining us today, and say goodbye, and hope to talk to you again soon.